How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to a new episode of Tier Talk. Guys, got my man on, my mentor, Gary Cornelius. He's got a new book out on the market. He's got a new book coming out in the future very soon about stress. But the book we're going to discuss a little bit today is called The High Performance Correctional Facility, Lessons on Correctional Work, Leadership, and Effectiveness. There is a link to that in the description. We'll let Gary kind of tell you how to work with that. Kind of basically, I got a phone number you can call, or we have a website and there's a promo code. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's in the link when you guys, in case you guys want to get the book. All right, guys. So real quick, I want to go over the sponsors and bring Gary right on. I'm very excited when I have him on. So let me just get through the technical stuff. Guys, please get a chance. If you get a chance, check out American Military University. It's a great school. If you're looking to get a higher degree, seek some higher level education, please check out American Military University. They're very supportive of what we do in corrections, very supportive of what we do here on Tier Talk. So please, guys, check it out. American Military University. We also have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. That book is doing very well. It's available on Amazon. It's used for training all across the country. I have the link to that in the description. And guys, my latest book, there it is, How to Succeed in Corrections. It is now available for pre-order at Blue 360 Media. They have published a book. They have reformatted it. They have added some new material to it. I'm really excited. It's a big book. It's a journal, guys. It's something I wish I had when I was coming into the profession. There's just so much advice, not just from me, but from other professionals in the field, including my man that's going to be coming on the show shortly, Gary Cornelius. So again, the book is available for pre-order. It should come out around end of August. And the link to that is in the description as well. All right, got all the technicalities out. Let's get my guy on here. What's up, Gary?
Hello, Anthony. How you doing?
Yeah, that must have been the fastest I ever did an intro, man. I just can't wait to see your face.
Okay.
What's up, Gary?
Oh, nothing. I'm just, just living living in retirement, Williamsburg, Virginia. But, I miss working in corrections, so I'm still keeping my hand in training and as you so nicely said, writing and pumping out books and things like that. So.
Hey, guys, just let you know, Gary was, when I started to try to cross into a little bit of the public eye, Gary had already established that. Gary was already well versed in how that works, and he had books already out there. He was teaching, and Gary kind of taught me the ropes, guys. And we're talking about 12 years ago, because that's how long Tier Talk has been around. So literally, I was a big fan of one of Gary's first books, Art of the Con, and we'll discuss that briefly, because I know there's maybe another volume coming out, but I gave it a shot. He was the first author I ever called, and he picked up the phone. And I'm like, oh, I didn't expect that. But either way, he has been always a true support to everything we're doing on here on Tier Talk, but also to me as a person. I mean, he knows my family. They know him. So again, just to have him on, I know he's a busy man, but it's just, I love having you on, Gary. So let's talk about what you've been doing recently, Gary, and then we'll get into the one book we're going to discuss today. But let's talk about what you've been doing these last, couple of years, maybe. I don't know when was the last time I had you on.
Well, as a former stressed out jail deputy, corrections officer, I got into writing and I got into teaching because it was very therapeutic. It was a way I could contribute something positive in a field that we all know is full of negatives, with the offenders and the manipulation and the stress and so forth. So I retired after 27 years, a little over 27 years, from the Fairfax County, Virginia office of the sheriff. My career there put me in the corrections field. Worked at the adult detention center, had a number of different jobs. And so when I retired, I was doing in-service classes. And then I did a stint at college teaching too for George Mason University from 1986 to my last class was 2018. And I always felt that, I've been blessed with I guess, an ability to write and communicate. And I just wanted to give back to a field that was very, very good to me and my family. And there's some days that I miss it. people said, do you miss the jail? And I say, some days I do. Some days I do. It was as you know, no 2 days are alike. You learn how to deal with many, many different people. You know how to work very well with good people. And so I just kept on doing this after my retirement. I am writing blogs, Lexapol, Corrections One, Corrections Connection, corrections.com. Wrote a number of books. And wanted to give back. The book that's I'm working on now. Well, I'm working on two actually. One is Stressed Out: Strategies for Living and Working in Corrections. That was first published by ACA in 2005. And the third edition will be out, I would say, late 2023. We're going through the final pages now because I got interested in stress management. And that's from Carolina Academic Press, Beth Hall, and wonderful to work with, Alice Heiserman, my editor. And the other book is a book that I'm known for, and I appreciate that, is The Art of the Con, Avoiding Offender Manipulation. And your book is excellent. And my co-author is from my alma mater, Pennsylvania Western University at Edinburgh, which when I went there, it was Edinburgh University, Pennsylvania, or Edinburgh State College. But I do guest lectures for him, and he got with me and he said, "Hey, do you want to Art of the Con? I'm using it in my class." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And went up there, did some lectures, and he said, "Well, how about a third edition?" And so he and I are writing the third edition, and we're using material by Anthony Gangi, Gary York, and some other folks. And that will be out, I believe, ACA. That's the American Correctional Association. They want that in early 2024. And I'm doing webinars for Lexapol. I'm doing webinars for the International Public Safety Association. And I'm doing webinars and online courses now for Justice Clearinghouse. Christina Hall is great to work with. So I stay pretty busy.
Yeah, well, you do amazing work. I mean, as I said, big fan of Art of the Con. It was nice enough for you to even let me. So the difference between our books is you are extremely academic, which is great because you got theories, and then all we got to do is the magic come in is how do I apply those theories? So there were a couple of things that you had in your manipulation book, especially the chumps. And what I did was I said, you know what? Let's see how this applies. And the book that I wrote on manipulation is very experience-based. I mean, you have some theories. I've used some social psych theories as well. But it blends with what your teachings are. And I think, to be honest with you, it's a good partnership or a companion book to The Art of the Con, because again, Art of the Con, for me, that was the first book I ever read on inmate manipulation. And why I admire you is because everybody always thought that manipulation was an outcome, and you said, no, it's a process, and I'm going to tell you how it's a process. And I've evolved off that.
I appreciate the compliments. And you were saying about academics, and after 32 years at George Mason, I met some amazing academic folks that people think that there were just professors and with a lot of degrees on the wall, but a lot of them are tuned in to what we do in corrections. And that's why when I wrote Stressed Out, when I wrote an Art of the Con, and the Correctional Officer Practical Guide from Carolina Academic Press, and all these are on Amazon, I wanted to mix the two, because you have good folks in academia that are studying the people that we deal with, and they're also studying the effects of the job on us. And then what you have to do, and I try to do, is take that data and apply it to the people working. And on Art of the Con, one reason I like working with Kevin Courtwright so much is Kevin is a former probation parole officer for the state of New York. And he's had some practical experience. And in this upcoming edition of this book, we're taking data and research data, but we're applying it. We're giving the reader, and this is for probation, parole, juvenile workers, which are often overlooked, and institutional corrections officers. We're trying to present it in a way with some tools that they can take back in to the facilities or to the probation parole office, the juvenile centers, the community correction centers, and they have this knowledge and they can apply it to keep themselves safe from the inmate manipulator, because that is a problem. And the first chapter of my new book, Mark Peel, I have to give a shout out to Mark Peel at Civic Research Institute, wonderful, wonderful publisher and editor. And the first chapter is on inmate manipulation because it is such a problem.
Now you're talking about, I just want to make sure we don't get the books confused. You're talking about this book right here, right?
Right.
All right. So let's get into that. So, and by the way, so now that I'm involved with a publisher, I could see like the benefits of it. Remember, I was a self-published person, and even when I got my first book published, they kind of just, formatted it, did the cover, but it wasn't a real publishing company that, to the extent of, let me just say, because it is a publishing company, just to the extent of where they promote it, they work with you for next books. This is what I'm involved with now. So all the stuff that you're doing, I'm kind of just stepping into that now, where I'm connected to a publishing company now. By next year, I'm going to try to start doing another one. It's if I could just give one advice, author to author here, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the field right now that have the urge. They just got to get that commitment, because believe it or not, nobody likes writing a book. They just like holding the completed project. Let's be honest. I mean, I'm being honest. There's such a feeling when you're holding that book that you wrote, but it's a serious commitment when you write a book. It is. And Gary, for how many? I mean, my God, the commitment. But what I'm trying to get at is when you work with a publisher, and they handle the work of formatting and making it look pretty and all this other stuff, man, it motivates you just to keep trucking forward, because
Yes.
they got you back here. So you keep trucking forward, keep trucking forward, keep trucking forward. And then by the end of whatever that time frame is, you got another beautiful project in your hand. And that partnership, if that lasts for a while, you find yourself writing books upon books upon books, because having that access to them, if they do accept you, the publisher, it takes so much out of the hard stuff of editing and making the book look pretty, making a cover, the stuff that we wouldn't necessarily be good at. Well, at least for me, I don't have that as my background.
I think you're spot on. You're 100% right, because people have asked me, well, when you write a book, and I take time doing this. I get the research and you can't see the rest of my office right now, but it's like a cyclone hit it. But I got a lot of research material, a lot of data, and but when you write something like what we do, you have to be very, very determined to get it right. There's a lot to it. It has to be presented in a way that the reader will keep turning the pages. And one thing that I found, I mean, I write blogs too and columns, and Alexa Pole, Shannon Piper, Dave Baker, great to work with. And they handle all the formatting and making it look good, but the meat of the product, the nuts and bolts of it, comes from you, and you have to. It's time consuming at times. People ask, well, how long did it take you to write? I think the correctional officer practical guide, it took me the better part of 4 years. I mean, because life, you have other things going on in your life, and you have to fit in the time to do it. As you well know, you're working full time, and you have to fit in the time to get this done. And in the movies, they always show the writer, he sits at a nice desk and he has his computer and he's just banging out, just pounding out a manuscript. And it's not like that. It's not like that. And you have to have it proofread. You proof it, and then somebody else proofs it, and then the publisher proofs it. So it's a lot of work, but the rewards, I found the rewards are very, very nice.
Yeah.
When that box comes in the mail and your book's in there,
Mm.
it's a nice feeling. And the nice feeling too is that this is helping people. What you and I do, we help the people not only behind the wall, but the ones out on the community corrections, inmate work details, the ones in the juvenile centers, the probation and parole officers. This helps them. These things that we do and we produce, they help them. And I think that's the greatest satisfaction of all to me.
Yeah, no, I mean, the written word, it's a legacy there. You know, when you are able to commit something to a book and pass it out. I mean, these are people that you'll never meet that you can have an influence on, which to me is a great thing. Where it's like when you know you have something you want to say, and it's like, you know what, I'm not going to be able to meet everyone that needs to hear it. So once you write that book, and it's vulnerable too, because you're putting something out into the world. You know, you don't know what type of feedback you're going to get. So there's courage behind writing a book too, because at the end of the day, you are going to get your critics. But I think for the most part, when you know that there's a gap, like for me, I knew there was a gap, and it's like, you know what, I'm going to write this with the honesty, of course, but just with the effort to serve others. I mean, the inmate manipulation book, believe it or not, didn't take me that long to write, only because I was using a PowerPoint, and I was teaching it so long. I was like, you know what? I know this stuff by heart. So I committed it to a book, and that book was pretty much done within a month of when I was able to send it out. The other book, this book that's coming out soon, This How to Succeed, that took me about a year, because that book, not only was it me writing something a day, a tip a day, I also, have someone who also gave me a quote. So over 159 things require 159 people I had to ask a question to, and then filter all these different answers to see which one best applies here, and which is fun, but it does become a little bit tedious, because they're like, you want certain things to hit a certain mark, and you don't want to lead somebody too much, but it's like, ooh, can you try? And then you have to go back, because sometimes hey, I loved your quote, thank you very much, but I'm gonna have to go with someone else's, and it breaks your heart. But then you try to give the person another opportunity. But it's just, you got an idea, you're trying to put it together, and the big thing is that you want to make sure the best of that idea gets to who it's got to get to, and that's sometimes you got to make those sacrifices. Now, Gary, this book here, I had a chance to read. I did go through it. I went through every page of this book, probably in a matter of 3 or 4 days. It's like a text style book, but very informative. I found it actually entertaining. I love reading textbooks, by the way. I'm reading one on leadership by Peter Northouse. And I actually have the book. I was looking for when you were talking, but I think it's still upstairs next to my bed. I actually think I have it next to my bed, because I think, that's where I put the reading. I have my office downstairs, or locked in the basement, where I have a bunch of books. But the books I keep on going back to are the ones that are next to my bed, which are 2 leadership books and your book, because I do look at your book and look for some topics that I can kind of blend onto the show. So let's go over first off, let's talk about this book. So the book's titled The High Performance Correctional Facility, Lessons on Correctional Work, Leadership, and Effectiveness. And as we move forward, Gary will tell you how you can get the book, how you can use a Tier Talk promo code, what that could do for you if you purchase the book. And I have all that in the description. But real quick, let's talk about why you thought this book was needed, and then we could discuss the different chapters of knowledge and wisdom that you're going to find in this book. So why is this book needed, Gary? What's your thoughts behind this?
Well, I got the idea for this book. I do a column. I'm hoping your audience is familiar with a great organization called the International Association of Correctional Training Personnel. It's a long title, but it's a great organization, IACTP. And I've been with IACTP since, I think, 1986 or 87. And I started to write little articles for ACA, American Jail Association. And they said, well, do you have any other ideas? And they were coming out with a journal. And I said, well, I'm a great believer in roll call, and I'm a great believer that when you have a roll call session, you can interject some training. You can inject some training into that. Better choice. Inject some training into that. And so my late first wife came up with that title, the 20-minute trainer. And because she said, well, how long's a roll call? And I said, well, 20 minutes. She goes, 20-minute trainer. And the name stuck. So what I did was that I went to Civic Research Institute. I was starting to write some columns for them. And Mark Peel and I, and like I said, a great publisher and editor, he said, well, let's think about a book. So each of the 30, see, I'm looking at it here. I think there's 34 chapters. Yep, 34 chapters in this book can be a roll call training session, or you can take each article and spread it out over a few roll calls or staff seminars or staff meetings or something like that. So I divided the book into, and if you go to the link that Anthony's going to put up, you go to the link and it'll take you to the book and you can look at the table of contents. But the first part is security and safety. So the first article is resisting inmate manipulation, because if you get manipulated, security's out the window. And then escape prevention, contraband, keys and tools control, corrections academy for non-uniform personnel, civilians, seizing contraband and gangs. So that's the first part. The second part is managing inmates. And I took the topic of inmates adjusting to incarceration, because as you know, and those of us who work in corrections know, inmates just don't come in and they look around and they say, okay, and they adjust. There's a process to that. And so the first 3, 8, 9, and 10 are how inmates adjust to incarceration, prisonization, adjusting to the pain, and then 7 needs. There's needs that inmates have to have met to adjust. Inmates with tablets, inmate leaders, a day in the life of classification, because I worked a lot of years in classification, and changing the jailer mentality, managing behavior, why it's important. So that's the second part. So the third part, as we all know, in corrections, we are dealing with special populations, LGBTQI, suicidal inmates, female inmates, and so forth, elderly inmates, so, and juveniles. So the third part it's special populations. And then, as you know, working in corrections, you have a chance to get sued. So part 4 is avoiding liability. And it's basically a good refresher, what I hope is a good refresher on inmate rights and things that you can do in corrections to hopefully avoid ending up being sued or being held liable. And then the last part 5, is staff development, ethics, managing stress. I put that in there. Fair, firm, and consistent, effective communications. I think Look at Me is about social media. And then there is an appendix on roll call training. And every court case that I used, Mark had me make up a table of cases so you can get the citations and so forth. So a lot of work went into this, a lot of years, a lot of work, a lot of back and forth, and so forth. But I'm proud of it. And I'm hoping that a trainer, a supervisor, an academy instructor can take it and use what's in there.
Yeah, and you're also very up to date. I mean, the tablets, the social media, which has been an issue recently. So your material is definitely well researched. It's not like someone that uses the same PowerPoint for 10 to 12 years. You are always evolving, seeing what's new. Because I remember when you were starting to write the book a little bit, and we started talking about at the time what was becoming a real big issue was transgender, which is still
Yep.
an issue. But having said that, this is where it started coming into the forefront. So I know the book took you a while to create, because I remember when we were discussing it, because you also, at the same time while you were writing that book, you were writing articles, for
Yeah.
Lexapol, but so Gary, obviously that is a book definitely I believe should be in the hands of not just individuals, but the hands of the training departments for the agencies out there, whether you work at a jail, a prison. And by the way, when you write a book like this, like a textbook, uh, don't you see that there's more similarities than there are differences between prisons and jail personnel?
I think there are similarities, definitely. A jail is a different type of facility, but you still have to maintain security. You still have to prevent contraband manufacturing and smuggling. You still have to prevent escapes. The manipulation factor is still there, whether you're a prison officer or a correction or a jail officer. So there are similarities. And what I like about this book, and I think what Mark Peel liked about it at CRI, is that it is, I guess, a textbook, but it's also a textbook that you can pick up and use for staff training. And I mean, a college class could use it too.
Yeah.
But when I write these books, I'm trying to bridge the gap and try to get everybody in academically and practitioner wise.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge sometimes. It really is, but it's possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do that too. I mean, I think that when you write books like this, that could be adopted by the colleges. I do a lot of stuff with Seton Hall, Rutgers, and I think that you bring that experience to the young students, and they see the profession from a whole different light. Because if not, most of their input about this profession comes from, media, the TV, whatever bias could be created against the system. But then you get some real good professors who are like, you know what? I've never been in the system. I'm teaching corrections. Let me go ahead and get some experts in the field who can really relate. And the questions that these students ask are good questions. I mean, the funny thing is about this all too is that sometimes we take for granted what we know, and then we think when someone asks us a question, like, "Oh, guys, come on, that's how simple that is." It's not, because they've never seen or felt what it's like to work behind a wall, to literally partake in this job. So when they ask you a question, it's never too much of a simple question, because in my mind is they don't have any insight or real insight. So to take that opportunity is spot on, to go into the school and talk to the kids. Now, Gary, another good thing about your book, the textbook here, is you don't have to read it from beginning to end. Even though I did, I found every chapter to have tremendous value, could be applied at any level of the profession, even through any department of the profession, because you kind of cross into not just custody, but the civilian side of the things. I mean, you pretty much cover a whole wide a range of literally everything that could encompass working in a correctional or a correctional facility or a jail. But it is a book you could kind of just pick up. You know what? Today I want to learn about this, and then go ahead and open the book and find the chapter that relates, and there it is, right? It's not a book that you have to read from beginning to end either, correct?
Yeah, you can just jump into it at any part. So if let's say your lieutenant comes up to you and says, "Okay, we just had this inmate manipulate somebody or snooker somebody. Let's go to chapter 1," and then I talk about chumps, which you have in your book, that I put into Art of the Con, and it describes how you can prevent manipulation. It goes into, you can make one session on why inmates commit crimes. I think that's in there. And then you have another session on chumps, or on elderly inmates. Let's say your medical staff contacts the supervisors and say, "Well, we're having we have more elderly people coming in, and we should set up some training on that." And you could go to that chapter. Civilians, and we have to really train our civilians, not just the volunteers, but we depend on the civilians. We depend on volunteers and programs folks. mental health folks, medical, and they have to be trained in security and dealing with inmates and so forth. And then, so in a college class, you could be talking about, okay, we're going to, this module of the semester is going to be about special populations, and there's a group of chapters on that. So, yeah, you could jump in at any time. It's not like you have to read it in order. You can jump in anywhere, and that's the way I set that up. You can jump whatever chapter you need or whatever topic you need training on. Hopefully, there's a chapter in there or there's a part of the book in there that can help you.
Yeah, and guys, just so I don't want to go talk about everything in the book. I really do want you guys to check out the book, pick it up. It's worth the money. But I thought we could talk about two quick things that the book covers, just to kind of give you a look at how detailed this book is, but also just, the information that's there that can definitely be applied if you go ahead and make the effort to read and really truly understand the material that's in front of you. So I kind of have on the title, Inmate Manipulation and Special Need Inmates. I believe that these are very hot topics, trending topics, and I thought we can go ahead and focus a little bit on, I guess let's first talk about inmate manipulation. So Gary, obviously the game has evolved, and the book you have right now does have a section about inmate manipulation. Again, guys, let me pop the book out one more time. The High Performance Correctional Facility, Lessons of Correctional Work, Leadership, and Effectiveness. And I know what's good about Gary is that when Gary writes his books, he also looks at the news and looks at recent cases of what of manipulation and stuff like that. So he's not building off the cases from like years ago. He's always looking for something new and recent. So Gary, again, your book does have touch on a little bit of inmate manipulation. So what are some of the areas that it covers that you feel should be taught more at the academy level, or even with our civilians? I mean, what are we not doing right here? What do we have to get out there?
Well, I think that when I wrote the chapter on manipulation, and you have to condense it down. It's a broad topic, as you know. I think you have to understand why people are motivated to be criminals. And I put a couple of experts' opinions in on that. Robert Hare from Canada, and who wrote the book Without Conscience, and Robert Agnew of Emory University. And between them, and I use this in my in-service classes, there's 10 points of why, excuse me, why people commit crimes. And if you're going to supervise these people, these persons in a jail or a prison or on probation and parole, you have to understand what their background is, what their culture is. And then I put the chumps approach, and then the three parts of manipulation, as you know, to control or change by artful and unfair means to achieve a desired end, something along those lines. And I tell people in my classes, that's the foundation of guarding against manipulation. If you know what the three parts of the definitions are. And then you have to limit of how many examples, but I put one in there called Grandma's Casket, where two jail inmates, their grandmother died. They were cousins, and they had permission to go to the viewing, the wake or whatever. And while they're standing there supposedly grieving, one is rifling through her casket, taking out some contraband. And I'd have to look at the article, but I think it was some drugs, marijuana, tobacco, and a cell phone. Excuse me. And he is rifling his dead grandmother's casket and trying to sneak the contraband back into the jail, and they were caught. And so I would use this for civilian training, people that want to be teachers, tutors in a jail or prison, volunteers, and say, this is how some inmates think. They would use their dead grandmother, and we've all lost people in our lives, and it's tragic. It's part of life, but we honor that person when we go view them in a funeral home or wake. And excuse me. And what these prisoners did were trying to smuggle contraband out of her casket and bring it back into the jail. And that's how their moral thoughts are. And people have asked me, well, and in classes, well, is that true? And I said, there's some things, like you said, about doing research on the news, and there's good stuff on the internet, and you have to be careful, because some of the some people on the internet have an agenda, as you know. And but I look for well-reported factual sources. And I tell people when they ask me this question, did this really happen? And I said, some of this you cannot make up. You can't make this up. And then I go into the chumps approach on, it's an acronym. I got tired of being called a chump. I mean, working in corrections, as you know, you get called a lot of things. And I got tired of being called a chump. So when I wrote Art of the Con, the first one, I said, how can I turn that around? And then I made an acronym, CHUMP, control, helping inmates help themselves. Each letter is a strategy. And so that's the first chapter. So you could take that into a roll call or a training session, and you can use it to make PowerPoints or whatever, handouts, if you want to do that. What was the second topic? The special inmates, special management?
Yeah, before we go into that, though, I want to mention with the manipulation. So for me, what made me want to write a book, because I did have a fascination. That's what made me find your first book, by the way. So I did have a fascination. And in my book, I explain a little bit as to what made what got me interested in it. Because for me, when I was at the academy, they kind of always taught us it's an outcome, just don't do it. What they didn't teach so much was the process, and by the way, the process really, I mean, yeah, you got the downing a duck, but that's still more of a leverage process. That's not really a mind game. It's more of, you gave me one thing, I got leverage, I'll get more. So that's a very outcome driven process. I'm talking about the process that runs automatically, where the inmates know how to control automatic responses, or that level of human behavior, and to me, that's where I learned to listen to my gut. You want to survive in corrections, when something says it doesn't feel right, go with it for just a second. Listen to yourself, because at the end of the day, for me, it's when if I felt I was in conflict, I'd stop. Because you're in survival mode. So before you could logically figure out why you're in conflict, something's there telling you. And then I just was very insightful. Let me replay this out. Why would I want to do that? Oh, because that's normal reaction. So in corrections, sometimes you got to force yourself to go against that normal reaction, because a lot of manipulative inmates know that if I do A, Gary's going to do B. So here we are. We're we're dealing with inmates. They do A, we automatically want to do B, and sometimes you got to check yourself, because they get you on your automatic responses.
You're right, because what they do, they find out your responses by targeting you, how you're going to handle certain situations. They test you, as you know, and I think we're getting better at that with manipulation training, and teaching folks that when you're asked a question by an inmate about violating the rules or doing a favor, they're seeing your reaction, and if you react the way that they like, they'll move right in. In fact, in the Art of the Con 3, the chapter I'm working on now, is I'm expanding the chapter, because S in chumps is stressed out staff or vulnerable. And I'm doing I'm expanding that a lot, because if they see you're stressed out, how you react to things, how you react to problems or the workload. Your supervisor comes on and says, hey, we're short the next shift, we're going to hold you over 4 hours, and you start griping about that. How you react to things Yeah, it's a process, and it's also an observation of your reactions.
Yeah,
And they're always watching you all the time.
I always said when they know that you're stressed out, your willingness to want help can also be a weakness. So you,
True, because when you're stressed out, and in my stress classes, I go into the days that I was, well, one reason I got interested in stress management was because I was stressing out, and and you learn that when you call for help, there are good people, your coworkers, your friends, your family, your supervisors, people in your life that can really help you. The mistake that a lot of people make in corrections when they're stressed out is that the inmate walks up, and they're great actors. They really are, and they have a mask of sympathy on, and oh man, this is, I know, the stress of the job, and I'll tell you, it's really bad. And then they befriend them, and the next thing you know, the correctional officer or the PO or the juvenile worker is not looking at them as offenders anymore. Who, I tell my classes, you can never forget they're either charged with or convicted of breaking the law. You can never forget that. But if an inmate works on a stressed out worker employee over and over and keeps coming at them with sympathy and we'll watch out for you and you can talk to me anytime, that objectivity is gone.
yep.
And now the staff person, as you well know, they look at the offender as a friend and not an inmate.
Yeah,
And that's where you have problems.
and you know what's funny? Besides the feeling of obligation and the pulling out of the prescribed role, your professionally prescribed role, the scary thing is there's a lot of places right now that are looking to remove the certain types of labels. Now, granted, I get it if you're a nurse and you want to call it a patient because the patient still connects to a professional role. If I'm a social service person, you want to call it a client, I get it. It's still a professional role that serves as a bit of a barrier, or I would as a as a barrier. That's correct, or a boundary, however you want to word it. But for custody, we're the fail safe. I'm not really so quick of letting go of the word inmate. Let's just say if that's the case, because it does connect us to our function. It's not meant to condescend. So I figure that is a label I've been used to because it connects me to my role. My biggest concern is the moment I forget who I am dealing with is the moment I forget what role I'm supposed to play in this game.
Yep. And
That's the key.
situational awareness. You have to be constantly aware of where you are, what your job is, and who you're dealing with. And we've all heard of the well-known examples that we talk about in Art of the Con 3, plus some others, but the Dannemora escape, the Baltimore City Jail Detention Center scandal, Baltimore City Detention Center, where
Sex scandal.
sex scandal, contraband scandal, and then you had the one in Alabama,
Yeah.
and where the assistant director of
White.
security walked the inmate out and went on the
Casey
run.
White.
And they're forgetting who they were dealing with, and I have examples I'm going to put in Art of the Con of people gravitating to these offenders because they're under stress or dissatisfaction with the job. The job is tough, we know that, but they need to talk to somebody, but they talk to the wrong persons. They talk to the wrong people. And when you do that, you open yourself up, and then the next thing, you're telling them too much about yourself. And that's when the manipulation can rear its ugly head.
Yeah, it's when you start getting into that personal information, you forget that, hey, this is an inmate. And at the end of the day, knowledge is power. So I always tell people too, guys, because a lot of people talk about, oh, you got to have small chat to get through the day. When you're on the other end of answering questions the whole time, that's not small chat. That's information gathering.
Yep.
You know,
That's
some of
true.
these people will sit there and say, "Oh, it's good to small chat." Yeah, okay, if it serves a function, yes. But I've seen people that are small chatting with inmate. Yeah, but I watched you for the last 20 minutes and you answered 30 questions.
Oh, they're good. They're very good.
I mean,
Very good.
I mean, honestly, and again, you know, just to kind of have another book that touches on that because there's not a lot of that of that type of teaching, and then be able to give that resource like your book provides to the agencies to help them because a lot of these agencies they could be overwhelmed with training because right now, guys, just on a side note, a lot of facilities are understaffed, and back in the day, maybe we could get some picks and we could look to cultivate, but now we have to look to transform. And you have a lot of trainers that are just overwhelmed. So it's great to have people like ourselves, Gary, of course, myself, you know, that are writing this material and saying, hey, take it, make a PowerPoint. We don't want, right, just take it. There's material there, get it out to your people. Because I've had people say, Gangi, can I use your YouTube videos for my class? Yes, that's what it's there for. I don't need money. Just take it. You know, hey, Gary, can I use your wonderfully written books about blah, blah, blah? Yes, that's what it's there for. Go teach it to your people. As long as you're not
Yep.
making money off it, I want you to take it to your classes. You know, I
Exactly.
want you to go ahead and teach it to the next set of recruits or senior staff. Now, I thought another topic we could touch on, and guys, we only did it briefly. I don't want to go too much into what he has in the book. I really do want you guys to get the book. And again, I have a link to that in the description. We'll explain about the promo code too. Let's talk about special need inmates. You know, I know that's on a rise. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, for the officers that do that job, or for the staff members, the civilian sides that work with them, your patience is unmatched. Your patience is unmatched because there's a finesse. Yes, don't get me wrong. There's still safety and security is paramount, but there is a finesse or a sometimes I'd say like a persistence tolerance that may be required when working with inmates that fall into special need categories. So what would you consider? Let's do that first. What would you consider a special need inmate, Gary?
I would say, well, there's several groups that those of us in corrections know that they need more attention and different ways of handling. And the first one that comes to my mind is always been the mentally ill. Uh, Working in a jail, well, you never know what's going to come in through the sally port. You never know who the police are going to bring in. But there's mentally ill uh, inmates, offenders. They get arrested, and in my classes, I say, what is the biggest mental health mental hospital in your community? And they'll say the jail. And you have people that are on the street, or they the police get called to a residence, and someone's mentally ill. They get locked up, and they're brought to the jail. Um, the other one is cultural diversity. I think since the George Floyd incident in May of 2020, I think we have to look differently on race relations and de-escalation and mutual respect. I think the cultural diversity is going to undergo that topic will undergo a change. The reason I say that is I've been teaching cultural diversity for a long time, and the standard in Virginia talks about racial bias, uh, um, racial profiling, and biased behavior, and so forth. And when I first started teaching it, this ethnic group behaves this way, and this ethnic group behaves that way. I'm putting more emphasis now on race relations, mutual respect, don't be bigoted, things like that. And some people think that there's a defund. The George Floyd incident led to the defund the police movement, the defund the jail movement. And I tell people that in my classes and in the book, don't bring the the politics of race and so forth, race relations. Everyone has an opinion. It's a hot button political issue. You have groups, and don't bring it into the jail. Treat everybody like Martin Luther King wanted. The content of their character rather than the color of their skin. And so cultural diversity is shifting, and that is a special population. Inmates in isolation, that's another one. And there are some people that think isolation is bad. And in fact, in one of my classes, I use your column a couple of years ago. I think you wrote for Lexipol, The Myths of Corrections. And one of them you said was that how isolation, administrative segregation, restrictive housing, whatever you call it now, is horrible and it's torture. Well, it's a tool that you have to handle it the right way. Another one, suicides, preventing suicide symptoms. How do you prevent suicide? How do you protect inmates from themselves? What's your response to a suicidal act or suicidal threat? Elderly and mature inmates, they come in. I mean, I remember an inmate in my jail the jail I worked in was 83, 84 years old. Female inmates, transgenders, and juveniles. That's what that section covers. And there's ways to handle juveniles. There's studies now. There's more data we know about transgenders. And when they come when they become incarcerated, they've had a rough time on the street, some from their families, some from employers, and they've had it rough. That is a lifestyle they've chosen. And I tell my classes and in the book too that, okay, people, you meet all kinds of people when you work in corrections. You do. And you might not agree with their lifestyle or some of their choices, but when you come into my jail, the jail I work in, you're going to be kept safe. And so transgenders, there's studies now. More studies have been done on, and it's in the book too, on depression and suicidal ideation and so forth with transgenders. And the corrections officer, they have to be aware of these things. And I'm not asking people to, spout off. Your supervisor walks up and how many transgenders have surveyed have thought of suicide. No, we're not asking you to be like a rolling Rolodex of numbers and data. But we want you to know that there are things about these folks that you have to know to keep them safe from other inmates, keep them safe from themselves until they leave your custody.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something. Just having a general understanding of some of those basics, because even sometimes we see it, we just don't know how to explain it. It's like, oh, that's what that is. And it's like, oh, that fits in perfectly because I see that all the time, and kind of just, knowing what it is that you're dealing with and then basically having some game plan. Again, nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're dealing with human behavior. But I think it's also good when someone writes a book that reminds people that you're not the only one that's seen this problem. I think a lot of times, a lot of us think that it's only us. And then the other side of it is a lot of us like, well, I can't be the only one. But sometimes you get two of the extremes. Like, oh, man, this must only be a me thing. And then sometimes like, no, it's not. By the way, I go through that too. It's just somebody at first has to have the vulnerability to put it out there. And I think like the transgenders, it is a tough deal right now because outside of protecting the ones that require protection, there are some that will manipulate that because they figure, there's
definitely
benefits now of claiming being a transgender because, again, there could be an option of going to a female facility. So just imagine how many may want to try that route and play the game so they can get into a female facility.
Well, I wrote an article for Lexipol last year. I revised an article I did on transgenders, and I wanted to make clear that transgender inmates, offenders who come in, are still, once again, the basic foundation of your thought process should be either are accused of the law, breaking the law, I'm sorry, or they are convicted of breaking the law. And some of them can use their identity as transgenders to manipulate. And I know in New Jersey you had a problem, and there's been other states where there have been problems with vulnerability of female inmates if you put a transgender female in with them. Now, I'm not saying all transgenders are like this. There are some that, and as you know, and I know, there are some offenders that come into your facility and they will never give you any trouble. They know the score. They know what their situation. They will never give you any trouble. But as I said in that article, you have to keep in mind that they are criminal offenders, either accused or convicted, and they can manipulate like other inmates.
Yeah, and I think that's the balance, because at the end of the day, you always have to have protection on the back of your mind. All right. So one thing is I have to protect the transgender, that universal precaution, but then I also have to be concerned of if there's an option to transfer that transgender to a female facility, am I putting the females at risk? And it's not an easy dance, because it could be very, what makes it very complicated, to be honest with you, is you're in a world where people could also manipulate the system. So it's the wolf.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So we're always worried about the wolf, because the wolf exists. And that's why for us, these decisions are not always black and white, because there's always going to be a Pandora's box. I mean, that's the key. And a lot of people, when they come to try to express their thoughts, they're very individualized, very focused on one inmate or one resident or whatever it is. And it's like, well, you know what? I get it. But the problem is, if I do that, well, it's case by case. It's never case by case. It's never case by case. As much as you like to think it is, word travels around the inmate world pretty quick. And next thing you know, that becomes the precedence. And so, when people are like, oh, you got to open the door, it's like, guys, be careful, because if you leave that door open, something's going to come in that you do not want. And guess what? We're the ones going to be responsible for it, and it's a very delicate dance. But I love about what you write, honestly, is that it's very balanced. It's like, hey guys, this is where corrections is shifting. So be mindful that this is where we're going to be at. Having said that, we shouldn't be breaking away from our core values of safety and security. So yes, there may be a softer approach to some level of how we manage inmate behavior, but it doesn't break away from what our default has to be if it needs to go there. If that makes sense.
It does. And one of the things I wanted with this book too is to show the many areas that correctional officers and staff are responsible for, because someone asked me once in one of my classes, well, what was it like working in a jail? And I'm going to translate this also to prisons where you worked. And I said, it's like you're a juggler. You assume your post and you're juggling so many different things. Sick call, mental health, coming up and seeing an inmate, feeding, searching, inmates get into an argument, and you're juggling all these things. And one of the things I like about the book, and what Mark Peel and I talked about, is we divided it up into 5 different subjects, areas. And the book can give you a sense of everything a correctional officer, or just about everything a correctional officer, has to be responsible for. And it's a lot, yes. Especially if facilities are short-staffed. And Justice Clearinghouse, I just did a online course for them on developing staff, and you have to be able to be flexible in your thinking, and you want to present good training so you can retain the people you've hired. and we're short-staffed. I bet your institution is short-staffed. The jails that I work with in Virginia are short-staffed, and we have to have good training, and we have to teach the skills so they can do all this juggling. And it's not like what you see in the movies.
It's not. And I love what you're saying when you're saying juggle the responsibilities, because that's why I always tell people when you go to try to create some policy initiative or some change, please go to the people that are juggling the responsibilities, because when you go to change one thing, there's an interdependency in regards to everything we juggle. They're all connected, believe it or not. That we're not juggling things in separation. We're just connecting them. They're interdependent. Yep. So when you go to shift something thinking, oh, well, that's only for this, guys, watch out. It's affecting everything else that I'm doing. And that's why a lot of people that work in corrections get pissed off, because, okay, I hope you know, when you went and changed this, now you just affected 5 other things that I'm trying to handle. And again, so I think as corrections evolve, I think that when people start to see the need for change, hopefully they understand that change does not come in isolation. There's an interdependency when it comes to change. And there could be a chance that when you go to move one piece, the whole house crumbles.
Yeah. And one of the things I talk about in the Stressed Out book is that there's some things that you can't control. And if you're an officer or a sergeant down in the lower ranks and a new policy comes out, and it might bother you, it might stress you out, but you have to think of yourself and take care of yourselves. And also you have to think of the loved ones around you, because they're your foundation. And some of these things you can't change. You just have to make the best of the situation that you can.
You know, I'm part of a team now that's dedicated to lift employee morale. It's like Your Voice Counts initiative. The name of the team is called CME, Committee of Employee Morale and Innovation, because with good morale comes innovation. And one of the things we talk about is basically when you're focused on external things that you cannot control, obviously your energy is going to it's just going to wipe out. What you have to do is learn to control your own attitudes and efforts. You know, at the end of the day, you can't waste energy on things you cannot control. Start doing things for yourself, because again, in corrections, I always tell people this is a Gangi original. I don't want a passive job. I want an intentional career. And at the end of the day, the intentionality comes in every aspect, including my own mental health. Yeah. I need to know who I am and who I'm becoming. And if I don't have an end game to that, then guess what? I'll let the career take me wherever it wants to go. And that's not good. That's not good. You got to know, exactly where this career is taking you, and then still have people in your life that know who you are outside of the uniform. And it's not like you have to be specific as to what you saw, but you can tell them how you felt. That's true.
And talking to people is probably the best way to deal with the stress. But I wouldn't talk to inmates about it.
101 there. 101 there, Gary. That's 101, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, guys, I mean, even when you talk, I always thought this too, and nothing's 100%, but bear with me. We have to be confident in this job. We have to be confident, whatever way you walk, whether you're walking on the civilian side, you're walking on the custody side, you got to have a level of confidence, self-awareness, integrity, some level of sociability, definitely determination or perseverance. But I think at the end, guys, there is some level of vulnerability as well, because you're dealing with things that most people will not understand or ever see, but it's got to be very careful of when that vulnerability gets expressed. It doesn't mean, like if I run to a code, I may not have that chance to express, but once that code is done, I should be able to say, hey, let me just sit down and really evaluate what I just went through to make sure I'm good,
and relax and calm down.
Right. And I noticed something too, if I may, nothing's 100%. The reason why I say you got to know people that are outside the uniform or outside of, outside the uniform when it comes to if you do have a concern, sometimes with my peers, oh, they'll be there for you. Don't get me wrong. Of course, my brother and sister, they'll be there for you. But a lot of their thing is really they're motivated to get you right back into the job. Let's get moving. I need you. Come on. I know you can do this. Where your loved ones are more focused on you being able to do that job. It's a different approach. You know, it really is, because the one with the loved one, the more vulnerable one, they're coming at Anthony, not Officer Gangi. You know,
Yes,
they're talking,
they're
true. Talking to Gary, not Officer Cornelius. And for me, I've been always able to kind of share some of the dialogue with my wife, because in the end, here's the bad thing if you don't, because I don't want this myth where you have this myth that, you know, I got a home, work, whatever. Obviously, you don't bring home to work. We know that. But I want to talk about this piece here real quick that matters when it comes to stress, if I may, is that change is so slow and subtle that if you are going through changes and you hide that off from the people you love, when you are truly changed, they can't help you no more because they don't know who you are. It's powerful, but it's true, Gary. You know that.
It's
you feel
true. It's true. Definitely.
You know, and by the way, guys, that takes courage every day to stop and check yourself, because at the end of the day, you know what the funny thing is? I'm going to add this. I'm going to make this a Gangi original because Gary just motivated something out of me. You know what we always say every day? We want to go right into work, right? And go home the way we came in, right? We always say that, right? That doesn't just mean physically. That means, you know, when I left my wife and I gave her a kiss mentally, who was I? And then when I go home, who do I need to keep on being? Because at the end of the day, everything I do obviously is for my family. So if I feel that there's something that's taking me away from my family, I need to fight to keep them together.
And that's the thing about handling the stress too, is the changing. When you leave, you change into deputy or CO mode. And when you come home, you change back into loved one mode. And you have to be able to do that.
And it's not easy, guys.
Not easy.
It's not
easy.
Hey, Gary, you have anything you'd like to say in closing? I got your book out there. Can you talk about the promo code, all that other stuff?
Yeah. Can you bring the promo code up, or?
Yeah, I have it. So I could read it. Hold on, I have it on my.
I have it here. I think. Hold on.
It's in my description. So if you guys go to my description, underneath the video here, you guys are going to see it. But this is what I got. So you're going to see this in my description, guys. So even if you don't get it here, it's in the description. To order online, listeners can go to, and then the website is civicsearchinstitute.com.
Civic Research Institute.
Civic Research. Okay.
Right.
Now, guys, remember the link's in the description, so you can click right to the link if you go to the description. And if you add to cart and enter promo code Tier Talk, all one word, and then you get, I guess you get a little bit of a discount, maybe? Is that what it is?
$30 discount.
$30 discount?
$30 discount code, Tier Talk at www.civicresearchinstitute.com.
Freaking awesome, guys, for a tech. That's awesome.
The phone number, if you want to order by phone, is 609-683-4450. Weekdays from 9:30 to 5. 609 660. I'm sorry. Let me start over. 609-683-4450.
Right, and I do have that.
I'd like to thank Mark Peel for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I have the number to that also in the description if you want to call. Hey, Gary, you want to get some closing words?
Anthony, it's been a pleasure to be on. It's been a while. And our mutual friends, Louis, Russ, Gary, York, Connie, say hello to them for me. I guess people say, are you ready to fully retire yet? And I say, no, I'm having too much fun. But anyone that gets the books that I put out there or reads my columns, a couple of things. One, I do appreciate it. I really do. And secondly, the thing that I treasure the most is that if you can take what I've written and make a training out of it, or develop a lesson plan or just talk to people about what the content is, and everybody can be a little safer, handle their stress a little better, and then come home at the end of the day, then it's worth it to me.
Yeah. And you know what, Gary, so I've been doing Tear Talk now for 12 years. Everybody kind of has that center, that foundation, before they branch off like a tree. If you think about it, Gary, you have been my foundation, my roots, and everything I've done, from the people I had on my show, the books I've written, whatever it is I've accomplished. I mean, to know that you're the root of it all, So it's like, what is it? Each one reach one, each one teach one, until all are taught. Guys, when you go back, as I'm over 20, almost 21 years now, I start to look back at my career. And it has nothing to do with status or rank, because I'm on the admin side. But when you look back at moments and where you could create an impact and create a legacy, and just know that you left something behind, so you can comfortably move forward. I think for me, kind of what Gary did for me, Gary basically gave me the chance to create a legacy by picking up that phone so many years ago and saying, just do it. Just do it. And I don't know.
I remember where we were, where I was when you called.
I remember where I was. I was on my deck.
I was at, my wife and I were going out west. I think we were at a McDonald's parking lot eating lunch. I think it was in South Dakota or something. And the phone rang and it was you. And everything. The other thing is too that I wanted to say this, and I'm saying this more in my classes. Learning doesn't stop when you sign off here. Learning is a continual process. I'd like to put my email up there, and if anyone is interested, if anyone would like information about the book we talked about tonight, and I'm very appreciative of this opportunity, or the ones I have upcoming: Art of the Con, Avoiding Offender Manipulation, 3rd edition from American Correctional Association, and Stressed Out Strategies for Living and Working in Corrections from Carolina Academic Press, the 3rd edition. If you email me and say you're interested, I'll put your name on a list and keep you posted on how how those are coming. I'm a freelancer, so I do a lot myself, and takes time. But if you get me the word of how you can be reached, I'll make sure that you're kept in the loop, or any advice I can give you at all on training or corrections. Just give me shoot me an email.
And it's adjinstructor@hotmail.com.
Right.
And that ADJ is adjunct, right? I'm assuming.
Administration of Justice or adjunct. I think it was, when I formed it, I think it was Administration of Justice, ADJ, Administration Justice. But
I never asked you what that was for. I kind of thought it was adjunct. All right, guys. As always, guys, please stay safe. The show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
No, thank you, Gary. And everybody stay safe.